Welcome to the Fellowship Podcast, a place where we get to know the people who make up the Baptist Bible Fellowship. In each episode, we sit down with pastors, missionaries, and ministry leaders from across our fellowship to hear their stories, their ministry journey, and a few lessons they've learned along the way. Our goal is simple: to connect leaders, share stories, and strengthen the mission. And now, here's your host, Randy Harp. Let's join the conversation.
Hey, welcome to our next episode of the Fellowship Podcast. My name is Randy Harp. I have the privilege of serving as your host and sharing my conversations with my friends from all across the country. And looking forward to our conversation today with my longtime friend, Michael Haley, pastors in Colorado. Michael, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's my privilege.
We first met back in Baptist Bible College days, a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, we weren't there all the same time, but we overlapped some. So it's been a long time, long friendship. So I appreciate you. Hey, take just a few minutes and just kind of introduce yourself, share a little bit where you grew up.
Michael Haley. I'm a pastor at Cross Creek Church in Fountain, Colorado. I was actually born about 30 minutes from here in Pueblo, Colorado. My dad was working at a church there when me and my brother were born, and he was working for Dr. Gary Gray back then. And then when I was a little bit before we turned one, we moved to Kansas. My dad pastored in a little town called Arkansas City, Kansas. For you, it'd be Arkansas City, Kansas, since you're from Arkansas.
The proper way to say it.
That's right. So we lived there till halfway through our sophomore year of high school, moved to Texas, and then my dad pastored in a little town called Sweetwater, Texas. And so graduated from high school there and went on to Bible college. So yeah, that's where we grew up and how we grew up. Interesting thing is my first or second youth pastor job was at the same church, Park Hill Baptist, where I grew up. And so that's where my oldest son was born too. So kind of interesting we got to be born in the same hospital, even though growing up in different places.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So growing up as a pastor's kid, just talk, what was that like? Was it hard on you, traveling around, moving, especially probably that high school move? Was that challenging? What's it like being a pastor's kid?
Yeah, I mean, I think because I had you guys know John, my brother, I don't think necessarily a lot of the stuff that a lot of pastors' kids we dealt with, or it bothered us because we had each other, so we just kind of ignored what anybody else thought. So yeah, we didn't move a lot. I mean, we moved once in my lifetime, and that was tough. But looking back, and even once we got there, probably 6 months to a year after we got there, I could see that was really God's plan and God's desire. And he worked it out. If we had stayed in Kansas, my life might look completely different at this point.
Yeah. What was it like growing up? Most people know this, but if they don't, you got a twin brother named John.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up as a twin?
I mean, you have a built-in best friend, and so yeah, we were best of friends, and it was interesting. Even when we were smaller, our best friends, probably I don't know, second, third, fourth, fifth grade, were also twins. They were 1 month apart from us. They weren't identical twins, but yeah, I don't know anything else. Obviously, don't know anything different. So that's just our friends learned to realize that kind of like a domestic dispute. If we got in a fight, you just kind of stay out of the way, because if you got in the middle of it, we would turn on you. So our friends learned real quick just to let us fight it out. So
now, are you guys considered identical twins? Because I see you. Obviously, you look alike, but
right.
Not identical. Are you technically identical twins?
Yeah, we're identical twins. So when we were kids, like if I look at pictures, funny, those twins that I was talking about just sent us a picture yesterday from, I think, third grade basketball. And the only way I know which one is me is because I know what number jersey I was wearing. So if we were swapped jerseys that day, I wouldn't know which one was me. So,
So you don't claim to be the better looking twin?
No, maybe the least not as ugly twin, but not the better looking twin.
So talk about when you graduated high school from Sweetwater, Texas. Did you go immediately to Baptist Bible College after you graduated high school?
Yep. Yeah. That summer after I graduated, we went to a church camp in Singing Hills. Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I think Jamie Ragle was speaking, and I believe Sandy Huntsman was doing the music, and I think he did games and stuff like that. But that's when I kind of surrendered to ministry.
Hmm.
And a month later, I was at BBC. So yeah, we showed up there, just turned 18 years old, and headed to Bible college.
Hey, let's backtrack a minute. I got ahead of myself. Talk about
Right.
as a pastor's kid. Talk about your salvation experience. Was it early, or did you have a every pastor's kid is a little
Right.
different, or someone that grows up, strong ministry background. What was it like for you?
Well, about 5 years old, my brother, he made a profession of faith one Sunday morning, probably in junior church or Sunday school. So the whole week from Sunday to Sunday that week, he made fun of me because he was a Christian and I wasn't. So I was like, well, I can take care of that. So the next Sunday, I don't know if it was in junior church or Sunday school, I prayed the prayer. But growing up, later on, 12 to 13, 14 years old, I came to understanding like I was just doing that because my brother had done it. And so between the ages of 12 and 14, I really wrestled with it big time. And probably about 2 years, I knew that I wasn't a Christian. But being a preacher's kid, there was that pride that like, well, everybody assumes I'm a pastor's kid, so I got to be a Christian. And
Hmm.
so that kept me for 2 years from really making that step of faith. And one night we were having I guess it was a revival, but Tim Lee was preaching. If you don't know Tim Lee, he was preaching like he does, and so he preached on hell. And I always say he scared the hell out of me. And so after that 2 year wrestling match that night, I was like, I'm taking care of this. So that's when I got saved at the age of 14. It was in September, I think, might have been the 27th of 19. I think it was 1987.
So another benefit of growing up as a pastor's kid, especially, some people may not know your dad, Mike Haley Sr., very involved in the fellowship as well. Who were some of the early influencers in your life? Maybe even before you were saved, but maybe especially after you got saved as a 14-year-old.
Yeah, there was, I mean, because we had at our church, we had a Christian school. So there was a lot of different teachers that came, straight out of Bible college and had some influence, or some of them that like most people probably don't know, but like a Brad Lowry, he's a missionary in Croatia now. And then Gary Pinion, he was the basketball coach at the time, and he's gone on and pastored different churches. So guys like that, Joe Warren, which I think you met when he's down in San Antonio, he was our principal. And so I don't know if it was every day, as a kid, we had chapel and we probably had it every day, but he would always put Psalms to music. He's very, very, very talented musically. And so there's some time still when I'm reading the Bible and a tune will come to my head that I think Brother Warren, as we call him, Joe Warren, had put some of the Psalms to music, and he would sing them in chapel for us. So that's the early years. Once I got to high school, then obviously my dad was a huge influence. But then Steve and Shelley Switzer. I don't know, somehow my dad convinced them to move from California to Sweetwater, Texas. And they were our youth pastors for about 2 years while I was in high school. So they had a huge influence in my life.
Yeah, that's a big move from California to Sweetwater.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would do that.
Hey, talk about real quick the big event that happens down on the downtown square in Sweetwater.
Oh yeah,
Did you
every
ever
year they have
participate in it?
no, the Rattlesnake Roundup. We did youth fundraisers by the Coliseum. We would set up a trailer and sell food to make money for camp. But that's about as close as I would get to the Coliseum during that. I'm not a big rattlesnake fan, so I stayed out of that Coliseum.
Yeah, yeah, it's just rattlesnakes everywhere, right? And
Yes, the
they do it
world's
to
world's
milk them.
largest. I don't know if there's other rattlesnake roundups. I don't know how big it has to be the world's largest, but yeah, people go out and hunt rattlesnakes, bring them to the Coliseum, put them in the pit, and they'd fry up rattlesnake and do all kinds of stuff.
Only in West Texas, right?
Yep.
Hey,
I
so
never actually saw a rattlesnake when I lived in Texas, but
you did or didn't?
no, I never saw one.
No.
I wouldn't go in that building.
So talk about coming to BBC, now Michigan University. Who are some of the your friends that you got connected with then that are still friends today. And I think that's where you met your wife. Talk about that.
Yeah, there's still quite a few guys. Ministry, it's funny as we were standing in freshman initiation in the student center. I think it was, oh man, what was his name? He was the dean of students, Tony Isaacs. Tony Isaacs just said, "Hey, look to your left and look to your right, and chances are by the time you graduate, uh, both of those people won't be here." So I think it was 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 that would actually graduate. And so me and my brother were standing there, and then Scott Harrop was next to us. And so me and Scott and John still talk about that
Mm,
because statistically, I don't think he was too far off.
yeah.
But the three of us that were standing there, we're still in ministry, and Scott, he's doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
My sophomore year of college, I met my wife. Interesting thing is her parents and my parents went to school together. They're at Mission U now, and so my parents and her mom were on a singing group together and traveled together. But we had never met. We knew of each other, but she was a freshman, and so if you remember the old snack shop, there were some stairs that went down, cement stairs that went down to the snack shop. They've redone that all now, but my Misty at the time, now my wife, she was coming down. I was walking up the stairs the day before. I was playing basketball in the gym, and somebody had elbowed me. I think it might have been Tim Cooper elbowed me in the eye, and I had a huge gash there, and kind of had taped it up a little bit. But so she fell down those stairs. Her shoes went flying. I mean, she came down the stairs hard. So went and got her shoes, and I always tell people she fell for me immediately. But that's how we met. So I think she was just so thrown off by my face. So she
You
fell.
swept her off her feet, it sounds like.
That's right. The glass slipper fit. And so the next day she saw me in the hallway. She had a Band-Aid for me to try to help with my eye. So that's where the conversation began.
Now you talked about yours and her parents were at BBC. How many, and I know your son came to BBC. How many generations of your family have been through BBC Mission University?
Three on my side, on Misty's side, she's was Misty Sears. 4 generations on her side. So I think it was when Derek went, him and Carly Weed, I'm not sure what her married name is, but they were the two fourth generation kids that were at school at that time.
Yeah, yeah, very neat. All right, so when you graduated Mission University or Baptist Bible College, let's talk about your ministry journey. Where all of you served before getting to where you're at now in Colorado?
Yeah, I graduated in 95, and then Misty and I loaded up a car, and I don't even know if we had a truck, but we moved to Florida, Sanford, Florida. Pastor Ron Williams was the pastor there, and Palmetto Avenue Baptist Church, and we stayed there for right at a year. Interesting thing now is his son, Jonathan Williams, is the pastor now, and so I was the youth pastor and basketball coach, and Jonathan was a freshman in high school at the time, and so now my nephew Blake is working for Jonathan at the same church. So then after a year there, we moved to, as I talked about earlier, we moved to Pueblo, Colorado, and I worked. Leon Griswold was the pastor at the time, and so we moved there in 1996, the youth pastor there, and then about I think probably 6 months after we got there, Brother Griswold retired, and he moved on and to other ministry stuff, and so then Doug Cox became the pastor. So we worked there for 7 years, and then in 2003 we moved to Newcastle, Delaware, where my father-in-law was the pastor, Ron Sears, and so we worked with him for about 5 years, and he had tried to get us to come out the year before. When he first moved out there, and we just didn't feel like it was God's timing, but then he came back the next year and persuaded us again, and so felt like that was God leading us to do, and so we got to work with her parents for about 5 years there in Delaware, and then
But you don't do short transitions from Springfield to Florida to Colorado
yeah,
to Delaware. So you're
yeah,
all over the
cross
place.
country moves is all we're up for. So hopefully that one we moved here in 2008. I'm hoping that's the last one and the
Yeah.
last move.
Yeah, talk about your ministry there. I know it's going well. So you moved to Fountain, Colorado. It's a military town, right, or close to a military base. And talk about uh, getting there and some of the changes you made and how the church is going now.
Yeah, we like I said in 2008. So for about a year, I was wrestling with when we were in Delaware. I was wrestling with what the next step was. I was at that age, 34. Uh, am I ready to move on to a different ministry and not be a youth pastor anymore? And so I talked to my father-in-law and my dad, and they both started looking. And so I for like a year, I was praying about going and being like an associate pastor somewhere. And I figured with my dad's connections and my father-in-law's connections, that would be a pretty simple, but nothing came up. So I had talked to the pastor in Pueblo, and so he called and said, "Hey, there's a church opening up in Fountain. At the time, it's called Gideon Baptist Church." And so it was interesting because I'd already made a plan to come out into Colorado to speak at Park Hill. And in between, we had made the plans, and when we came out, the pastor here, Robbie Black, he retired. And so, since we were already coming out, we interviewed with them while we were out here, and they came down to Pueblo and listened to me preach, and which I'm surprised they even wanted to interview me with that afternoon because I'd probably preached 5 or 6 times in my life,
Hmm.
and I um, had pneumonia because we had gone skiing for a couple days. I was sick, and just anyhow, we interviewed with them that afternoon, and just felt like that was really what God was leading us to do. The church at the time was, um, I don't know, 30, 40, maybe 50 people. The most of the people at the church were all of the same family. So the founding pastor was still in the church. He founded this church in 1970. So this year we celebrated 55 years.
Hmm.
And so he was still coming to church. The pastor before me was his son-in-law. And so when he retired, him and his family, and they were still coming to the church. And so the two main deacons were grandsons of the founding pastor. So it was a pretty small family church.
Hmm.
When you get counsel from guys, does this sound like a good opportunity? Most of them said no. And so when we came out and candidated, we got to meet all the people and just really kind of fell in love with the area, fell in love with the families that were here. And we just felt like this was where God wanted us. Felt like they were ready for something new and for change. And so, yeah, we moved here in July of 2008. So it was 17 and a half years ago.
Now, where exactly is Fountain? What's it close to?
Fountain is just on the south end of Colorado Springs.
Hmm.
Like my address is Colorado Springs, but I'm like 10 minutes from the church.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of a suburb of Colorado Springs. If you're on the interstate, the highway I-25, which runs north and south through all of Colorado down to New Mexico, you really don't know if you're leaving one and going to the other.
Hmm.
The exit right off the interstate where we're at is Fort Carson Army Base, and so there's 20 to 30,000 soldiers stationed there.
Hmm.
Colorado Springs has, I think, 5 Air Force bases, if you count the Air Force Academy.
Hmm.
But our church is on the southern end. Most of the Air Force people live on the northern end. So we have, 60%, 50, 60% of our church is Army. If you count the Army retired or those who are contractor works for the Army, it's probably a higher percentage than that.
Hmm. So Army, not Air Force.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I always say the Air Force people get paid better, so they live up more north where it's more expensive to live. The Army people live down here with us.
Yeah. All right. I want to ask you two questions kind of about that. Talk about again, what was it like or going and pastoring where the founding pastor was still in the church and so much of it was family. If what's something you learned through that maybe you can share with someone else that may be going through it?
Well, God has done a lot of amazing things in our church, and there's nothing here that hasn't been changed since we moved here, whether that's walls or style, bylaws, name of the church. Everything's been changed, and we did obviously move slowly. And when we were praying, I was praying a long time about changing the name of our church. So one night on a Wednesday night, I was in my office, and Jason Hodges, his dad or grandpa's the one that started the church. He was the head of the pulpit committee when I came, and so he came in one night after Bible study, and he's like, "Hey, have you ever thought about changing the name of the church?" And I said, "Oh, almost every day." But I said I didn't know how to bring it up, and I didn't want to bring it up until I had a good name either, and I hadn't had a good name, and so he said, "Well, what do you think about Cross Creek?" And I was like, "Yeah, I like that." And so, I hadn't been here very long, but the neighborhood next to our church is called Cross Creek, and so they had already thought about that before, and so I think as far as when it comes to change is nothing new, but you got to be willing to invest in people, and let them know that you're in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
You don't just come in and start making changes just to make changes. Interesting, when I did visit before we ever came, that Sunday when we interviewed, I preached down at Park Hill, and so a couple of them came down and listened to me preach. And then that afternoon when we interviewed, um, they just I asked them, are you guys willing to be more contemporary, to move forward, to make the changes necessary? Because the families at that time, they didn't want their grandpa's church to die. They wanted it to go, and then they wanted a church that their kids would come to.
Mm.
They had little kids, most of them the age of our oldest son at that time, Derek, and he was, I think, 10 at the time. And so I said, "Well, are you guys ready to do that?" And they're like, "Well, what does that look like?" I said, "Well, like church this morning, except with a lot more electric guitar." And so they like, okay. So they had an idea of what I meant by that. It's one thing to say, "Hey, we want to be more contemporary," or "We want to make some changes." I think you just need to be honest with people about what do those changes look like. And so I was very upfront with where we were headed before I came here. And God kind of orchestrated the pace of which we changed, especially musically, because at the time, 40, 50 people, there's not a whole lot of musical ability.
Yeah. You didn't have a lot of electric guitarists.
Yeah, we didn't have anybody that really could do a whole lot. So Cindy, her dad is the one that started the church. She was the piano player, and then another guy by the name of Bobby, he was leading the worship. His dad was the one that had just retired before me, and so it's interesting. The first Sunday that we were here, it was July 4th weekend. We just did church the way they'd always done it, and the next Sunday, we started changing things. And so we for a couple of weeks we did, because I could play guitar a little bit, and my wife and I can both sing. She's a much better singer than I am, and so we would start out with two hymns from the piano, and then I would lead two songs of like praise worship. It wasn't super contemporary at the time, but I would lead two songs and then preach. And so I found out Cindy, she was good enough to play with us. So probably after about a month or two in, we went away from that format and we sang hymns and praise together. So
Yeah.
and she's one of our keyboard players, and Bobby still plays and sings and helps lead worship. So, and thankfully I
It's
don't.
cool that they bring them along with you.
Right. And so as God brought more people to the church, brought more musicians to the church, we were able to transition those things. So
Yeah, did you say that about 50% of your membership are military, Army?
yeah, it's probably 50. Yeah, if you calculate the people that are contract workers, it would be higher than that, like retired.
What's the secret or not secret, but what's the strategy for reaching that military mindset? What do you got to do to reach them? Because you don't have a military background, right?
No, I don't. It was interesting when I first moved here. I called Jim Bays, who was in San Diego and military community, and I knew him because my parents and them were best friends. We used to do vacations with them and their family when I was a kid. So I got some advice from him. I was like, how do we reach these military people? And he just said, you need to learn their language, because if military people, they have a language all of their own.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
some of
just
that
learning some
language
of the
we can't
key.
use from the pulpit though. So
Yeah, not that language. I reserve that for at the shooting range. I don't know, but just like there's so many military terms, and so it's interesting because when we first started growing, after we changed the name of our church, was when we were really in 2010 when started seeing more military people come. Is they were just, well, you guys are so military friendly, and I don't really know that we did anything different than what church should be done.
mm,
We weren't necessarily, we didn't have a specific military ministry or anything like that. We were just, because people would say that, I was just blown away. That I was like, well, what is it? I don't know what that means, because you're friendly to anybody who walks in the door. So I still haven't figured that out. But once you start reaching a few military people, they reach each other.
yeah.
Because they move we lose 25-30% of our church every year, because they're only here for about 3 years.
Yeah. I was going to
And
ask
so
that. That's one of the challenges. It's so transient, right?
there's a rotation. The cool thing about it is there's always new people. We see new people every week. We have 5 to 10 families that visit every Sunday.
So you
And
only need
so,
about a 3-year preaching cycle, right? Or sermon
yep,
calendar. You can just go back over them all.
yep. We just recycle all the old messages, because the few people that are still here that would have heard them probably don't remember them anyhow, because I'm not that good a speaker. So,
Hey,
but you want one?
talk about your church right now. What's something how you've been there now almost that was 2005 when you got there?
2008, so 17 and a half years.
Yeah, so you've been there a while. What's something that's exciting to you right now that's going on, or something new or fresh that's you're pretty passionate about?
I don't know what, like I was kind of saying, is it feels like it's always new and fresh, because there's always new people. There's always people, like I said, cycling out, but there's always people cycling in. So it still feels like a church plant, because there's just so many new people. So yeah, I don't know if it's interesting. It's unique, because I've never been in a church like this. One of the cool things that we've been able to see is, I think we've had 5 military guys, that were, soldiers that transitioned because they felt God was calling them to ministry,
Mm,
that have transitioned to become chaplains in the military. So they're paid missionaries, and so that's been really cool. Not something that we ever planned or sought out. It's just God calls them, and then we usually will bring them on staff, or we don't pay them, but we bring them on staff for 2 years as an internship,
mm,
and then once they become chaplains, they get PCS somewhere else.
yeah.
So that's been one interesting thing. Right now, for years we've just been out of space, and so we're in the process of looking at relocating and buying a building that's right on the interstate, right next to the Army base. It's the opposite side of the highway, but so that's one of the things I'm excited about now, and nervous about, is
Yeah.
how's God going to work that out,
So is it a
and what.
property to build on, or is there a building already there?
Yeah, there's property in a building. So the building is, the idea is we would expand it some, but the building's already there. It's a self-storage climate unit,
Hmm.
self self-storage units, that's climate controlled, and so yeah, that's what we're currently looking
Yeah.
at.
How many services do you have a weekend? I know you max them out and you do multiple.
Right now we're doing three
Yeah.
three services. So
All Sunday morning?
yeah, all Sunday
Yeah,
morning.
so
So
you get a good afternoon nap in. I've done 3 services on a Sunday morning. It's
yeah.
exhausting.
Yeah, it can work out, especially if you're introvert like I am. I'm done with people, but um, I'm used to it now. So we've done, this is probably the third time over the years that we've done 3 services. So there's been times where we'll do 3, and then we'll knock out a wall and try to figure out a way to add some more chairs, and go back to 2. And then back in 2017, the our building, back in the 80s, they'd put a wall up and cut our auditorium in half from the way it was originally built. So in 2017, we knocked that wall out and opened it back up, and we're like, oh yes, we can go back to 2, but that didn't last long because we outgrew that space. And
Mm,
so this is honestly the first time that we've done 3. We've been doing 3 probably a year and a half this time. This is probably the first time we've really grown. You're doing 3 services. Every other time that we've done it, we've kind of plateaued.
Mm.
And so we'll knock out a wall or, take the coffee bar out and move it to the lobby so that we can add more chairs. And so this is the first time in the times that we've done it that we've seen growth doing 3
How do you
services.
know, for those listening, a big question, how do you know when to go from 1 to 2 services and then when to go from 2 to 3? And
Right.
we could spend a lot of time talking about
Right.
the strategy
Yeah.
behind
I
it
mean,
all and when to do
I
them.
think,
But
I
how do
think
you
the
what's
studies,
some general instructions or thoughts?
I think the studies, are what, 70%, when you're 70% full. I think during after COVID, those kind of dropped even more. But um, for us, it's just once the kid spaces were maxed out, because they say your auditorium and your parking are the 2 biggest things, and your kids ministry, those 3 things. Once those are 70% full, which our parking is just horrible, but people deal with it. So we just don't have near enough parking, even with 3 services. But we have a good parking lot team that put them out in the field, and we just pray that it doesn't snow so much right before Sunday and then melt that
Mm.
it's a mud pit. So because most time in Colorado the sun is shining and it's usually pretty nice. There's only been a couple Sundays where we've had to get trucks and pull people out of the mud because they're stuck. Um, so we prayed a lot about this last time. Well, it's been 2 Easters ago that we went back to 3. And for us, we felt there was a certain number that we needed to be at to maintain and have enough volunteers to pull off 3 and actually grow.
Mm.
And so once we got to that, there was one Sunday that was like everything was full, and at that point, the the workers, they were like, "Yeah, it's time."
Mm.
So just a lot of prayer, and then you get to the point like once it's too full. And then what I always tell people is if you have chairs in your auditorium, it's very easy to manipulate the feeling of if this auditorium is full or not. Just take some chairs out, hide them somewhere, and
Yeah.
spread the chairs out,
Face them.
and
Yeah.
and so it looks like it's still pretty full. If you have for us, the max chairs we can get in our auditorium is 380 seats. Well, right when we're doing 2 services, we need all 380 seats, but with 3 services, I think we might have 300 seats. And you can actually walk in between the
Mm.
chairs when somebody's sitting, but with 380, it's, you just tighten them up a little bit. So,
Yeah.
if you're 60, 70% every week in 1 service, and it's go to 2, because you'll grow just with the other option of another service time on Sunday morning. And there's
Yeah.
just excitement.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, let's talk about your connection and involvement with the BBFI. So currently you serve as the state rep for Colorado, but were kind of born into the BBFI, right? So uh,
Yeah.
what all have you seen or been involved with in the BBFI?
Let's see. I mean, obviously my dad was a BBFI pastor. I grew up in a BBFI churches, and I've always served in churches that are BBFI. The church here was part of the BBFI, and um, somewhat loosely. So yeah, I've been the state rep different times, and then I served on the executive committee for a little while. And when I think it was when you came on, I was serving on that
Yeah.
as the secretary, whatever that means. So,
Did you take
and
good
then
notes?
I did. I don't know where any of them are, but I take good notes. Yeah, the way you've got it set up now is much better. There's a little more of an onboarding process
Right.
and like job descriptions. When we came in, I think my brother probably shared the story, but when the executive committee came in, we were all brand new to it. And the first meeting that we went to, not one person from the executive committee that was there before was even able to be there. And so we had no idea, like,
Yeah.
what are we supposed to be doing?
Learn on the fly.
Um, yeah. So Colorado, I think Daryl was the last state rep, and then he became a trustee at the school. So he asked me to kind of step in. Colorado's unique because there's not a ton of BVFI churches, and then the whole state is divided in half by the mountains.
Hmm.
And so people on the other side of the mountain don't come over here, and we don't go over there. It's just like it's like a different state,
Yeah,
just
that's pretty
because
wild.
to travel over the mountain just takes too much time.
What's something that excites you about the BBFI right now?
There seems to be a really good spirit. The last couple meetings that I've gone to, it's like, man, guys are excited to be there. The church planning seems to be doing well, much better than it has in the past. And like we always talk about, the missions is great. So I'm part of the SBC a little bit, and man, the way the BBFI does missions, I think we do it right.
Yeah.
Or we do it well. I'm going to say if we do it right, they're doing it wrong. But I like the way we do it. There's seems to be a good spirit of like, hey man, let's do this together. The BBFI is still, if you remember the old summit list, people used to say, hey, is this a summit church
Yeah.
in this area? It's like, well, that's a broad question. Like, is this a BBFI church? That's a broad scope because we still have a lot of churches that do things a certain way and churches that do it a different way. But I feel like the people that are in the BBFI now, they're okay with that. As
Yeah.
long as you're preaching the gospel and reaching people with the gospel, that's keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah. A bigger umbrella, and we're unified around a common vision,
Right.
reaching the
Yeah.
world. So,
You know,
hey, let's
your
talk.
context.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying context is king when it comes to mission fields.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing here. You know, my church here looks way different than my brothers in Texas because this isn't Texas and that's not Colorado.
Yeah.
So you gotta understand your culture and your context of where God has you.
Hey, talk for a minute. This could be a whole other podcast just talking about this one topic, but talk a little bit about your crazy hiking adventures that you've been a part of,
Yeah,
and share where all it's you have. I know being in Colorado, it's you're in the mountains all
right.
the time, and you've done what are they, the 14,000 feet mountains? Is that what they are
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, they're
14ers?
called 14ers. So anything over 14,000 feet.
Yeah,
And so I mean I get to see one every day when I look out my window at Pikes Peak, which Pikes Peak is actually I think it's the 32nd tallest mountain in Colorado. But it's the most famous because America the Beautiful
right, right.
was written there. So
So
there's
where
50.
all of you hiked? What talk about the John Muir Trail, and you did Kilimanjaro? Not
Yeah,
did you do Kilimanjaro or Mount Kenya?
we did Kilimanjaro.
Yeah. So talk about
So back
those and what you did, and then why you did those. Yeah, I think is a better
okay.
question.
Yeah, so there's 58 14ers here in Colorado. So I think I've hiked 30 of them. And so when back in 2019 is when we did the John Muir Trail. And so Andrew Even, he works for Mana. He's vice president for Mana Worldwide. And so one day he's like, hey, you want to do the John Muir Trail? And we were actually on a bus in Cuba. And he started talking about it. I was like, I'm in, but I don't know what that is. And I had never heard of the John Muir Trail. I'd hiked a lot of mountains, here in Colorado, but and so he began to tell me about it, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so the purpose behind it is to raise money for missions and for Mana. And so there was several projects that the money we raised went to. And so the John Muir Trail, if you don't know what it is, it's a 222-mile hike over the Sierra Nevada mountains. And you go, I think there's 12 mountain passes that you go over. And you can either start in the Yosemite Valley or you can end there. And so I found out after we did the hike, Andrew didn't tell me this, that we did an extra like 20 miles because of the size of our group. We had to hike in to start the hike. And so that was 2 days, 20 miles of hiking so we could start the John Muir Trail.
Yeah.
And so I think we raised a little over $100,000 from Mana Worldwide. And then
How many went on that trail? How many went on that hike with you? How many started and how many ended? Because it's not the same number. But then, how many
yeah,
days did it take you?
I think there was 13 that started, and five of those were just going to do a couple of days. So that was a given. And then I'm trying to remember, I think there was a couple of guys that were going to do it that jumped off with those people that were going to just do a couple of days. I think there was 9 total that were going to do the whole trip. One jumped off early, and then Sean, if you know him, works with Lonnie. He didn't jump off the trail. He got taken off in a helicopter.
Yeah.
And so I believe it was 7 of us that finished the hike. We did 244 miles, 17 days. So you on this trail, you have to, with your backpack, you have to have a big bear canister, and that's what you keep your food in. And then you carry your tent, carry all your clothes, carry your food. So you can't carry enough food in those bear canisters to last you, 17 days. So there's different checkpoints where one of them we had taken these buckets of food to a drop-off place, and then there was a mule train, not a meal train like you have at church, but a mule train. And so these donkeys brought out all of our food, and we met them on the side of the mountain and resupplied there. And then another resupply spot was you mail your food to, and they have like a post office there at the checkpoint, and you can get the rest of your food for the rest of the trip. So that was a lot of fun. It was harder than any of us I think thought, because most of us knew you could do a hike for a day, but how will your body respond after 17 days of 10 hours of hiking over mountains?
After you were done with it, how long did it take you to kind of catch your breath, to kind of get back from fatigue, be normal?
Yeah, when I got home, it wasn't too bad. What I found was I couldn't sit in the office for very long. I had to get outside, because for 17 days we were just outside. And so that was interesting. I had to get outside, and it was also cool because for like a week or two I could eat whatever I wanted. My body was burning so much stuff from the hike, and then but that didn't last too long.
Hey, I'll give you a chance for a shameless plug, because you and your brother co-authored a book about that experience and
Yeah.
lessons learned. What's the name of the book? And I know it's on Amazon, but tell everybody the name of the book and
Yeah,
where they can find it.
that book is called an epic. I Must Go, which is John Muir's famous quote: "The mountains are calling, and I must go." And so the book is called "I Must Go," an epic journey of experiencing God. And so the book goes through different. I think it's 10 different mountaintop experiences you see in Scripture, and so different mountaintop experiences. And then each chapter begins with a tale from the trail, is what we called it. And so my brother shares a story from the trail that goes along with that chapter, and then I share one as well. That book has a link inside of it that will take you to like a landing page that has small group discussion questions. There's also intro videos for each chapter in the book. That the plan was for me and my brother to video them on the hike. And unfortunately, he was sick most of the hike. And so there's 12 mountain passes. So on different mountain passes, I just got my phone out and recorded a short intro video from the hike that intros that chapter. So it's a cool book to read, but it's also a great, like a small group resource that you can take people through, that has discussion questions and then intro videos for each chapter.
Yeah. I think it's fun watching those videos because you can see the progression of how the toll it's taking on you along the way.
Yeah, but it's funny is because my wife has a picture of, I think, Andrew from the first day of that hike that she sent to all of us, and then the last day, it was a big change. So when we did Kilimanjaro last year, again to raise money for Mana Worldwide, I think we raised a little over 200,000 on that hike, and there was 13 of us that started and 11 that made it all the way to the top. And the other two didn't die, just so you know. They just didn't make it to the top. But I forgot where I was going with that. When we did the Mount Kilimanjaro, that was a much shorter expedition, but obviously much more elevation.
Right. Yeah. How high is Kilimanjaro?
19,342, I think.
Yeah.
So I wrote a book on that, shares a lot of the stories on that trip as well. If you don't mind me shamelessly plugging that, but so that one's called Climb, and it goes through the Psalms of Ascent. And
Mm.
so it goes through the different Psalms of Ascent. And I'd done a preaching series through that. So again, I shared with stories from the Mount Kilimanjaro and then through the Psalms of Ascent.
So you and your brother both have written several books. I don't want to plug him. I'll plug you. But
Right.
how many different books have you written that are on all on Amazon?
Um, I always five. There's 5 books
Is your
that I've
bestseller
written.
the children's books?
Probably, yeah. So there's 5. I don't want to say real books, but 5 chapter books, and then there's 3 children's books, and so 8 books altogether. But yeah, those are all on Amazon. So the first children's book was Does a Princess Have to Wear a Dress? And then that was inspired by my niece. She's 16 now, but she had asked something, a question about that. And so in her room is a picture that my other niece, Blair, John's daughter, drew of an astronaut. And so that's kind of where the idea for that first children's book came. And then once I had a grandson, I was like, well, now I got to have a boys book, because the princess book was for my daughter. She's 12 now, but she was quite a bit younger when we wrote that book. And then so the second one was does a knight have to carry a sword? And so it's pretty much the
Hmm.
same story as the princess book. And then the other children's book is Praising God from A to Z. And so that one just kind of goes through the alphabet and how can we praise God through that?
Yeah, that's great. Hey,
That's
Michael.
right.
Michael, thanks for taking the time to join us on this podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And if I called you John, I apologize.
That's all
So,
right. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all you do for the fellowship.